This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are locked in with Fourth and Frames. I'm Rhett Manuel here with Nate Barkham and Drew Scott. Where tonight we're going to break down our plays and fades for Week 15 playoff time, baby. And if you're joining us on YouTube, we'll be answering your questions there as well. And if you're watching with us on YouTube, first off, thank you for joining us. Second, if you want to support our content, best thing you can do is like this video and then subscribe to the Fantasy and Frames YouTube channel to catch any time a new podcast or short form from us drops. You can also search for all podcasts here at Fantasy and Frames by name on your preferred podcast platform. For us, make sure to subscribe to that Fourth and Frames podcast and also lock in at fantasyandframes.com for the latest weekly rankings for both redraft and IDP, as well as our staff dynasty rankings and all of our latest articles. Fellas, start with you, Nate. How are you tonight, buddy?
Good. It's fantasy playoff time. I know many of you guys, like myself, are in probably not as many playoffs as we'd like, or in just enough, right amount. Some of our teams are fighting for that, whereas like my Chiefs are there's still a mathematical chance. So I don't want to hear any shit talk yet quite a bit that they're ruled out. All they got to do is win out. Chargers got to lose a couple, go 10-7. Colts, Dolphins, Ravens all just need to keep losing. Ultimately, it seems like a path to the Super Bowl, if you're asking me. Easy peasy.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. Of course. Yeah. All the Saints have to do is, wait, they can't do anything. They've already been eliminated. It's fine.
Extend the NFL regular season to 36 games and win out, and they still might have a chance.
Hey, never say never. And Drew, I just need to ask you a quick question before we get started tonight on these plays and fades. Talking about last week's Smash or Pass. Who's the bigger loser here in 2025? Me in the Fantasy and Frames Listener League, or P. Diddy following Sean Combs the Record?
Oh my God. That nobody even has to look at the standings to know that you must have had a rough year if you and P. Diddy are in the same zip code. So it's obviously been pretty rough for you. I think Diddy might still have it a tad bit. Well, no, Diddy's kind of getting what he did. The people that Diddy did wrong is who has it worse. But yeah, it was a rough year for you, man, but without a doubt. But not to worry. Your boy got one of the 2 bye weeks. I'm going to represent the show in the playoffs, and I also got one of the 2 bye weeks in the Fantasy and Frames Dynasty League as well. So hopefully, one of those 2 leagues I can bring it home. We'll see. But it was a rough one for you, man. I hated to see.
Well, all I ask at the end of the day is that you do 2 things. First off, can't stop, and second, won't stop. Okay, that's all we need from you.
I got you.
Appreciate you, man. So let's go over last week's Smash and Pass and how we're checking in on how we're doing so far this year. Nate, 2 for 2 last week, baby. 49% for the year. Let's get it.
I know, right?
Kyle came through with another. Go ahead.
Say just most important week of the year, of course. I mean, if people listen to me or not at 49%, I'm not quite sure. But Jalen Hurts, I think he went from QB like 15 to QB 28 in one play. One play. Oh.
2 turnovers on one play is insane, man.
Woof.
Kyle went 2 for 2 last week. He's 50% on the year. Drew, first off, picking every week this year and heading into playoffs at a 59% clip is unbelievable. And you went 1 for 2 last week.
I was the only one on the show to keep us from being perfect last week. I went 1 for 2. Everybody else went 2 for 2. And it's all A.D. Mitchell's fault. He screwed us again, man.
Thank you. He screwed us again.
We are not the problem, Red. He is the problem. But that was the only call that kept us from going perfect last week. So I definitely was a little upset about that one. But it's all right. We move on. We got another week ahead of us. So we keep this thing rolling.
And here I am, like
passed down from this road to Sunday morning, because Sunday morning I was riding that. We had a lot of A.D. Mitchell questions, and we talked about on Wednesday night. me and the boys, we said 80 Mitchell. I'm all so every option I gave to everybody was so we collectively probably pissed off the Wednesday and Sunday faithful.
At least we hit everybody, not just part of it.
Yeah. And so also, me this year, I might be 80% for the year, but I'm like the September call-up who kind of just decided to step in the last month of the season and just decided to start raking before pitching caught up to him. So 80% on a small sample size, we'll take it anyway, but I mean, nonetheless. For the year, we've hit, as a show, 54% of our calls without guest appearances. So, hey, that's pretty solid. We'll take that.
Well, to use a baseball reference, you pulled like a Trey Savage or there's I'll do the pitching side where the hitters haven't figured you out yet. But the good news is a hot ending doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to keep it going next year. Where 80% maybe is that what you're setting the bar for yourself next year?
I mean, I'm trying to live that 1998 JD Drew life right now when he was called up for the card. So that's a Drew reference for you. So there it is.
Yeah,
both of us. Yeah, that's a good one. You selected the right crowd. You knew your audience for that one for sure. Between myself and Nate.
So, boys, let's get into it right now with our smash and pass and a new segment tonight that we're going to call Pop or Flop. Our smash players are going to be players outside the top 12 wide quarterbacks, 15 running backs, 20 wide receivers, or 10 tight ends. In the Fantasy Pros Week 15 ECR, whereas a pass is going to be a player inside the top 15 quarterbacks, 20 running backs, 35 wide receivers, or 12 tight ends. Within that Week 15 ECR, which is, overachieving or underachieving, like we've said. And this pop or flop is going to be guys we're talking about as being upside plays who are outside of the top 100 flex rankings and the Week 15 ECR. So, Nate, let's start off with you, my friend, because Baltimore for weeks now is kind of starting to get its groove back. And it kind of starts at the tight end position where they've got two very distinct roles. Mark Andrews is pretty much at this point, he's old reliable. He's their red zone guy. He's the guy that Lamar Jackson trusts when they're down near the goal line if he needs a touchdown. And then you have Likely, who is more or less their seam guy, big play, try to stretch the defense a little bit. You're having a little bit of trouble deciding which one you were going to take this week as your smash play. So you just took both of them. So talk us through it.
To be fair, of all the analysis, Jorge hates when it's like, no, it's a gut call. This ain't no gut call. This is just proofs in the pudding. Any tight end you can start against Cincinnati is surefire way to at least have one, if not two people that can produce. Most situations don't have two tight ends that can both actually be a tight end one because they typically have other pieces of that. And outside of Zay Flowers, the Baltimore Ravens don't. So I have no problem. If you have Andrews, if you have Likely, if you have to start two tight ends, I'm not recommending starting two tight ends. Let's not get too crazy. But I will say for this, because I got to play catch up and I want to try to get above threshold, I'm going to put my smash on the line and say both Andrews and Likely will be top 12 tight ends this week. Ballsy, I know, but last time a tight end wasn't a top 10 option versus Cincinnati. Week 4, Denver. Now, the tight ends in that game, 27% target share. Did they do much with it? No, not necessarily. And then we go back to week 2, which was against the Jags, and why they continued the Jags, that is, to feed BTJ that game. Could have been Brenton Strange. It wasn't. They went away from Strange and basically just force-fed BTJ into, I think, 4 drops that game, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But, yeah, I don't need a ton of data outside of the things that we've talked about every week. If there's a smash play, you go against the Bengals defense at the tight end position. So fire up Mark Andrews, fire up Isaiah Likely. If you got them both and you're in a super, super deep league, especially, some of these like Kings Classic bullshit leagues where the 14 teams, 3 flex spots and everything, you're just dying for anybody to play. So Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely in that order to finish this week, both top 12 options.
Yeah, I mean, like whenever you look at Cincinnati, they're on pace to be the worst defense in NFL history against the tight end. Like it's not just like they're a kind of good matchup. It's the best it's ever been, and they just do not cover tight end whatsoever. Everywhere else in the secondary, they're pretty tough. Like whenever you look at DJ Turner, he's likely going to shadow Zay Flowers, and he has taken receivers better than Zay Flowers completely out of games already this year. And he's already taken Zay Flowers out of a game once already this year.
Exactly.
And whenever you remove Zay Flowers from that offense, what's up next? Like it's not Rashad Bateman, it's not DeAndre Hopkins, and I mean Dax Hill, Jalen Davis, those guys in Cincinnati outside of DJ Turner, they're also playing really well. And the receivers outside of Zay Flowers on Baltimore hadn't been difference makers anyway. It's Zay Flowers, and then it's the two tight ends, and I'm expecting Zay Flowers to be mostly a non-factor in this game. And so, to your point, the next two guys up are the two tight ends that are playing the most tight end friendly defense in NFL history. So I know you said it's a ballsy call, and it is. It absolutely is a ballsy call, but I think it makes a lot of sense, though.
Yeah, if you had a wide receiver that was just like a player A against the Cincinnati Bengals on the season so far, and it was just a position, 97 receptions, 1,258 yards, 15 touchdowns, 137 targets. I mean, that it's through 13 weeks of the season. It's you said it exactly right. Historically bad, and it's going to be one of those situations that we'll think about when we find that Achilles heel for a defense to exploit year after year. There is always one.
Yep, 100%.
All right, so Nate going with Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, possible dual top 12 tight. I mean, it's a gutsy call, but you know what? You've made the case that Bengals defense, not just against tight ends, but pretty much in general, just terrible. Historically bad across the board. But Nate, if I had anything to do with it, you won't have two top 12 tight ends this week because Theo Johnson against the Washington Commanders is my smash play for this week. And man, this Giants team has they've kind of consolidated around Wan'Dale Robinson as their number one with Neighbors going out. But they've had to find that number two target. And when Jackson Dart has been on the field, it's quietly become kind of Theo Johnson becoming that guy. And I mean, you look at his usage, he is a guy who is sitting here. He only has a 17.2% target share, but that jumps up to 29% in the red zone. He has an 86% snap share on the season. He's got a 33.6% slot rate. He's run 83.3% of routes for them this year. He's top 5 at the tight end position in air yards. I mean, he's got an ADOT of 8.3, which the tight end position is quite high. And he's turned it into 5 touchdowns for the season. I mean, this is a guy that you look at his red zone target share, which is super important, especially at a tight end position, a touchdown dependent position like tight end. Like I said, that 29% red zone target share puts him at 6th at the position. And he's playing a Commanders team that, for better or worse this year, hasn't been good against the tight end position. Their linebackers do not cover well in that position. Their scheme Johnson looks near the goal line. Washington has kind of shown themselves to be vulnerable, especially against the play action, the seam route. He's got the high participation rate. He's got the strong air yards for our tight end position. And like we said, with those red zone looks and how it's kind of been a consistent thing for him all year, I mean, the touchdown possibility for Theo Johnson is always there on a weekly basis. So this is the type of guy that has a legit breakout week written all over him this week between who he's playing, the volume, the matchup, the red zone role. They all line up. Let's line it up for Theo Johnson to have another good week because let's face it, in terms of the passing game, after Wan'Dale, the Giants got to find somebody, and we've seen the report with him and Dart.
Yeah. It'll be Washington with Bobby Wagner didn't practice. Not sure if that's going to lead to him not playing. He's not great in coverage anyway, so it might not be the worst case for that team. But you said exactly right that it's not just early start troubles for the Commanders either. The last 2 weeks, really the last 4 weeks, they've been a bottom 3 team against the tight end position. I don't think anything's going to change from there. So I'm right there with you. And he could finish right in there between Andrews, Theo Johnson, Isaiah Likely. There you go. We got tight ends.
10, 11, and 12, 8, 9, and 10, 1, 2, and 3.
I want to be a little more optimistic than just a bottom end tight end.
That's why we said 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, you want to finish top 3? Okay. Now that's going shooting the moon. Let's do it.
That's going for broke, baby. Come on now.
Going for broke.
And to Albert's point, J.J. McCarthy, he had 3 touchdowns against the Commanders last week. 2 of them to tight end Josh Oliver, and the other one to tight end T.J. Hawkinson. So maybe the Commanders can be beat there. Which I know we said start your tight ends against the Bengals. You just start everybody against the Commanders. Any position,
right?
Doesn't
Exactly.
matter. If they're playing the Commanders, you play them.
So, Drew, take us home with your first smash play. I mean, you are talking about a guy right here who, I'm going to be honest with you. When it comes to running backs, I have a type. And that type is usually boils down to being hyper efficient. Usually their snapshots kind of have to creep up as the year goes on. I mean, let's give a couple examples from the past. Jalen Moore is a classic red guy. Blake Corum heading into this season, and that season is worn on. Classic red guy. Sean Tucker, classic red guy. Just guys who we kind of just wait to kind of pop off and kind of emerge. And it may happen or it may not. But for Kyle Monangai, this is a guy that slowly but surely throughout the year, he's had a couple big games. He's flashed big in moments. And he's kind of started to earn Ben Johnson's trust to the point where it's pretty much become a 50-50 backfield with DeAndre Swift. At ECR running back 29, even though he's playing the Browns. I love this call. Let's help us through.
Yeah, and the even though part about the Browns isn't even necessarily a bad thing anymore. And this isn't an anti DeAndre Swift take either. I like both Bears running backs this week against Cleveland, and that's a wild sentence to say given how tough the Browns defense was to start the year, but that just hasn't been the case lately. Over the last 6 weeks, they've been the third, or over the last 5 weeks, sorry, they've been the third best matchup for fantasy running backs based on schedule adjusted fantasy points given up to the position. They even gave up a big game to Tony Pollard of all people last week. It's just the run defense has fallen apart after being a matchup that we were completely avoiding to start the year. It hasn't been the case. And over that 5-week stretch, the Browns have given up 6 rushing touchdowns, which is tied for the 6th most. And they're giving up on average almost 130 rushing yards per game as well, which is 13th in the NFL over that time. So the matchup, while it was a difficult one at the start of the year, has been a positive one over the last 5 weeks or so. Now, Monangai is going to give you virtually nothing in the passing game, but he has been heavily involved on the ground for the Bears recently. Over the last 3 weeks, he has 9 more rushing attempts than Swift, and he's averaging about 10 more rushing yards per game over that stretch as well. Swift still has been the more efficient runner on a per-touch basis, and surprisingly has also been getting about 2/3 of the rushing attempts inside the 5 when you would think that might be more toward Monangai, but Monangai has just been more successful in those touches that he's getting in the scoring area. He didn't score last week, but prior to that, he had scored in 4 straight games. And so while it was, like more 60-40 in Swift's favor, even as close as like 75-25 most recently, it was like 33%, 66%, some along those lines. Monangai has just been more successful in that area, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him get more looks as far as the scoring opportunities go. And with how run-heavy the Bears' offense has been recently, they're averaging almost 35 rushing attempts per game over the last 3 weeks, which is tied for the most in the NFL. And then how good this matchup is, I think that both Swift and Monangai can end up being really solid plays this week. So ECR has Monangai just inside the top 30 running backs, but he's a borderline RB2 for me this week in a smash play.
And you really, the nice thing is even with limited touches, the big explosive plays that Cleveland has allowed on the ground, as I'm going back and looking just to see kind of it, small opportunity, big production, and about every other week you see a 20, 30, 56-yard run like in Pollard. I mean, even if we go to week 13 or no, week 12, I guess it is. No, 13. Guess who had the longest run of the day? Mark Andrews. See, we're going back to the tight end. Mark Andrews.
Everything goes back to Mark
through
Andrews.
the air. He's obviously the lethal on the ground. No, I think you're spot on there that there can be multiple. We did. Remember 2 months ago, you would just focus on the Browns and said, "Now pass." Well, the Browns are too good. We assume that defense, and it's an assumption. We assume that they're going to be dynamic and explode and just stop everybody that they're facing. And it hasn't been the case. And I think Monangai can very easily get. I think we'll see a lot of those. Who would you rather start? Sit and start this weekend, especially on Sunday morning pregame show. If everybody wants to jump in and have your Kyle Monangai questions, I'm going to stick with Kyle Monangai. I'm going to always recommend it because my boy Drew said it. Don't worry about what we said about A.D. Mitchell. Chances are, if they listen to A.D. Mitchell, they're not in the playoffs anyway.
They're not playing today anyway.
Sorry about that. My bad. Sorry.
So true. So true.
God. So those are our smash players. Nate with Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely. I went with Theo Johnson. Drew went with Kyle Monangai. Drew, let's roll these questions, baby. Let's see what our listeners have said tonight.
Yeah, let's get into it. So Epic Fell is going to start us off. So, y'all, would you rather start Riley Leonard or Pickett in Superflex or play a flex like Debo or Chuba PPR? So
I'm appalled that this is a question.
It's rough, but it is a legitimate question, though. And one that I think is worth asking. Because quarterbacks have such a safe floor, assuming they don't get injured. Like, even in the worst of weeks, they're probably going to end up with 6, 7, 8 points. I think the question comes down to, for me, are you favored and do you need a safe play, or are you more of an underdog and you need some upside? Because I think the answer is probably, if upside is the answer, I think Debo is probably the answer. He's got a pretty solid matchup this week against the Giants, and I think he could outperform these quarterbacks. If you just need something safe, then I think you can plug Kenny Pickett in and live with what you get. But I think it really just depends on what your team calls for if I'm the one making this decision.
Yeah, I would also ask the question if it's a 4-point passing touchdown, that skews even a little heavier towards the Debo side. If it's your traditional 6-point, and honestly, I probably would have chosen. I might have went with Riley Leonard over Pickett myself 1-to-1, just watching some of Riley Leonard into the game. But he was banged up and he's been working through. I think it was a PCL during the game, and so I don't want to trust. We might see Phillip Rivers, for crying out loud.
I was going to say, I think Phillip Rivers could very well end up starting that game.
I think that yes, I think he could. Do I think he will? No, I think it'll be Riley Leonard. But it wouldn't shock me if the total number of dropbacks is closer to 50-50 than 100-0 going in Riley Leonard's favor. So that being said, I'm leaning Pickett with you as well. If it's a 4-point passing touchdown, I would make the case for Debo if your same scenario unfolds. If you're looking for big ceiling quarterback play, if you're looking for just safety, it might be I don't know. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe that's the opposite of what you just said.
It is the opposite of how I feel, but I will say if it is 4-point and you can tell me that Riley Leonard plays this week, I do think Riley Leonard is also a decent play in a 4-point scoring league just because of how he is mobile. He can use his legs, and the Colts do have weapons. So between what he could give you from a rushing standpoint and the weapons he'll be throwing to, Seattle is about as brutal as it gets right now with how that defense is playing. And so that definitely caps the upside, along with the fact that I just don't think Riley Leonard's very good. But I do think that those guys can give you a safe floor just because of what the quarterback position seems to do. But if I need any kind of upside, I'm going Debo personally. But I can see why it's a brutal question.
Yeah, around the frames real quick. Riley Leonard, and we're going to use is Riley Leonard going to have more fantasy points than Phillip Rivers has kids this week? And that's 10, yes or no?
Yes. He had 11 last week in half a game.
I'll say yes. If he just scores one touchdown, he should be able to get over that number.
Okay.
But
That's a lot of damn kids.
There's a lot of damn kids.
That is a lot of damn kids. So hopefully that helps. Epic fail, I don't even know if that might have been an epic fail of an answer, but hopefully it helps. We got a two-parter here for Cap from Life or Cap for Life. Starting off with the running backs, and he's got a receiver question as well. But starting off, Breece Hall or Chris Rodriguez. Breece does have a brutal matchup against Jacksonville this week. They've been really tough against the run as of late, whereas Chris Rodriguez has the great matchup against the Giants, but he is essentially just a two-down guy, and he's also not practicing. Yeah, so that's a problem too.
And he's also Chris Rodriguez, but that's either here nor there.
Even if he's healthy, I know the matchup's tough, but I'm still going Breece Hall over Rodriguez.
I think I agree.
I am too, and I'm, unfortunately giving you every reason why not to play Breece Hall next. But I'll make a little caveat or an asterisk in there that maybe he's a pass, but not over Chris Rodriguez. So that way, re-support this.
There you go. And then follows it up with the receiver question: Jaden Higgins, Flowers, or DJ Moore. And this is difficult because I just got done talking about how I think DJ Turner is going to severely limit Zay Flowers. But whenever you compare it to the other options that you have, I think the answer still might be Zay Flowers. I mean, maybe you can go Jaden Higgins. I mean, Arizona's secondary has been getting beat up after starting out the year looking pretty good. Arizona's secondary has been a more beatable matchup, and he is starting to get more involved behind Nico. I do still have Flowers several spots ahead of him, but yeah. So I guess I can give the caveat again. If you just need a safe play, I think Flowers is a safe play. He's gonna, he'll see the targets. Higgins might carry a little bit more upside because the matchup is easier and he is starting to get more involved, and he's not going to be spending his day getting shadowed by DJ Turner. But
Flowers,
as much as I don't. Yep. That's how I have it as well. All right. We got Brian over on Twitter. Got a couple tough ones this week. He needs to start off. He needs two receivers. He has Igbuka, Devonta Smith, Juwan Jennings, and Scary Terry. I'm going Igbuka against Atlanta and Devonta Smith against Vegas. But Scary Terry against the Giants is very, very close. And no, never mind. I'm going Terry. I'm going Terry.
McLaurin and Igbuka for me.
Yep. I agree.
Does the Igbuka slump kind of scare you guys a little bit? Was starting to hit that threshold where he's past what he would probably normally carry in the college season?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a rookie wall or what it is, but both the head coach and offensive coordinator have been very vocal this week that they know how important Igbuka is to the offense. Their plan is to get him involved early and often. Hopefully that's not just coach speak, because Atlanta's secondary has been getting beat up pretty good by receivers recently. So the matchup is good. It does get a lot more complicated because Mike Evans and Jalen McMillan are both expected to play, along with Chris Godwin also being healthy. So this is the first time in a while that this wide receiver core is healthy, but it makes you feel a little bit better that's at least their first week back. And so they might not necessarily be full-time guys. And Igbuka's as bad as it's been, he's at least still been getting the targets. And he's the guy that I'm most confident walking out there and getting 6-7 targets this week. And the matchup's a good one. And so it's rough.
And really, there's one other thing too that I think is as much, if not the most important thing, is Tristan Wirfs. And with Wirfs returning, really, or at least supposed to be healthy. I mean, watching Baker play anytime that he's missed part of that offensive line, it's really been him just scrambling and trying to make something happen. And I think that's the connection that I want to see is with time. And I think that we'll get back to more on-target throws. I think we'll see Igbuka get more I don't want to say concentrated and high value targets, but better targets in general.
Right. Rhett, any disagreements, or would you roll with Igbuka and Scary Terry as well?
Probably the safest call right there, especially with Jalen kind of going through the yips. AJ Brown emerging over the past few weeks, so Devontae is kind of a little bit less safe than he has been. So yeah, I think I would agree. Shout out Jorge. We're gonna call him F1 McLaurin because that's what Jorge wants. And then and eggs. I think call him eggs.
And then he had a running back question as well. Do I even consider Marks over Jonathan Taylor, or am I tripping? The league is PPR, same league as my wide receiver question. Thanks. I get it.
Brian,
we have no idea what the offense is going to look like for Indy, but I can't ride JT this far into the season and then put him on my bench for Woody Marks. I know Woody's extremely involved and the matchup's pretty solid for him this week, but I'm going down with the ship and I'm riding things out with JT. But I was surprised how close I ended up having these two guys in my rankings this week. They're only like 3 or 4 spots separated.
Here's my question though on JT. We have questions about what the Colts offense is going to look like. And if we have questions, doesn't that just mean that JT might be in line for more work than he normally is on a given basis?
I think so. I think he's going to be very, very involved, but it's tricky because he hasn't been as involved in the passing game recently. And then Seattle, they have been one of the one of the top two worst matchups for fantasy running backs over the last 5 or 6 weeks.
The matchup is terrible, but we talked about this pre-show, and we're just going to say it blunt because that's what we know. Woody Marks kind of sucks. So, I mean, it is what it is, but
but you know, if you are curious about some more plays and fades that you might have to make, we got some breaking news from the boss man, our very own Rhett Manuel. His plays and fade article for week 15 is officially live over at fantasyandframes.com, or you can just click on the little link that's down here in the chat as well. So
yeah, I hate that guy.
That is officially live. That Rhett guy does some pretty good work, so you should definitely go check that out. Last question before we get into the pass plays. We got a kicker question. Cam Little or Tyler Luke this week? I've got Cam Little a couple, like 2 spots higher. So I would say Cam Little. Strong kicker opinions?
No, I mean, I guess I trust the weather in Jacksonville potentially to be a little bit better than in Ohio, but
Cincinnati. Yeah.
Neither game, you know, I'm always looking for a dome and middling offense that can at least, you know, the total number of stops. So
yeah, Luke should be in the game with the higher point total, but Little should be in the better environment, and at least the Jacksonville offense should be good enough. I mean, I got Little at 4 and Luke at 6 right now for what it's worth. So I don't really think there is a bad option between the two, but I do technically have Little higher.
Yeah.
All right, good deal. So,
sorry.
So, fellas, you want to go get into these pass plays?
I mean, I think that's
the next logical step of action, I think.
Drew was just talking about Jacksonville's offense and Cam Little, and we're going to go from Jacksonville's special teams. We might as well pivot to Jacksonville's defense, which I know, no, I'm not passing on the Jacksonville Jags defense, but I'm going to pass on a player who's going to be going up against that Jacksonville Jags defense. And that is one in the aforementioned Breece Hall, which didn't want to, you know, give up the lead. But am I the only one that has completely overlooked just how good Jacksonville's defense has been as a whole? Or have you guys been on and you didn't tell me?
I was doing some research today for that plays and phase article. Is it accurate that Jacksonville is like giving up something like less than 90 rushing yards per game this year?
It's funny you say that, Rhett. What if I were to tell you that they have allowed 5 total touchdowns on the ground, which is the 4th best mark in the NFL? What if I were to tell you that they've only allowed 842 total yards rushing, which is the best mark in the NFL? Well, yes, I know the Jags. If there's one weakness, if you will, it is a passing allowed yardage to the running back position. Middle of the road, I get it. If I wanted to say why I would start Breece Hall, that's what I would go with. I would talk about how Jacksonville can allow running backs to catch the ball at backfield and do something with that. But I'm not going to do that because I'm telling you the reasons why to sit Breece Hall, or at least temper expectations, is that while Jacksonville, the aforementioned reasons, 5th best overall in terms of fantasy points allowed to the position. Over under, guys, 100-yard rushers allowed on the season. Over under of 1. What do you want
to say? For the purposes of this exercise, it's under.
It's over. They've allowed 7. So, I'm just kidding. It's 0. You were correct. No, it is still 0. How about 90-yard rushers? Over under 1.
Under still.
How about 80-yard rushers? Yep, same thing. It's 0. 70-yard rushers, they've allowed 1. That's Jonathan Taylor last week. And 60-yard rushers, they've allowed 2. Jonathan Taylor and Patrick Mahomes. Because why wouldn't it be Patrick Mahomes?
Of course it is.
That's the 2 that they've allowed on the year. It is, nobody else. And nobody else has more than 54. And that includes Christian McCaffrey, Ashton Genty, Kyron Williams, K9, Chase Brown, the decent names. I know Genty, Kyron, Chase Brown, Kenneth Walker, not exactly week in and week out, boom or bust. But on the season, the Jags have allowed more RB3 finishes to the opposing running backs than allowing RB1 and RB2 combined. They've had 7 RB3 finishes allowed and 6 total RB1 or RB2 combined on the season. Add in the fact that Breece Hall did not practice today with some knee soreness. He should play. He should be probably a low end. I'm going to say he's going to be, mid RB2. So not the RB1 that you're hoping for. I'll give him RB. I'll say he's going to finish as the RB 25. I'm going to go him outside the RB2. How's that sound?
Yeah, it sounds about right. I have him a little bit higher than that, but the matchup really is brutal. And you mentioned that if a running back's going to beat Jacksonville, it's going to be in the passing game. And I don't know if it's just because of the quarterback change or what, but Breece has only had 3 targets over the last 2 weeks combined.
Touch on that.
Yeah, his receiving game, it just hasn't really been there recently. Maybe if Brady Cook starts, maybe that changes and he dumps the ball off to Breece more. But from what we've seen recently, it hasn't been a part of the offensive game you would want to get. Especially with Garrett Wilson not on the field, Breece Hall is arguably the most talented pass catcher you have out there on the field.
A.D. Mitchell would like a word, Drew.
Yeah, he's dead to me. He's absolutely dead to me. He messed up our perfect show last week. But so it makes no sense why you wouldn't want to get him involved. But for whatever reason, the last 2 weeks, he hasn't been involved. And so if that's what you're depending on for Breece to be productive, then you better just hope that Brady Cook starts and he has different tendencies or that they change up the game plan. But that hasn't been the case the last couple of weeks. So like to your point, you might not be able to completely fade Breece. I still have him as a borderline top 20 running back. But like we just talked about Woody Marks, if you wanted to play Woody Marks over Breece Hall, I wouldn't blame you a bit. If you wanted to play Kenneth Walker over Breece Hall, I wouldn't blame you a bit. And those are things that probably would have sounded crazy a few weeks ago. But his involvement mixed with the matchup are concerning enough that, he's right there, borderline RB2 for me. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Breece Hall, kind of one of these guys. At the end of the day, having a better year than he did last year, but hasn't really been over the top. And like Nate illustrated so beautifully, it's just a tough matchup to step into this week. But guys, I'm going to go ahead and keep it moving. And before I get into talking about why I think Christian Watson is a pass against the Denver Broncos, let's just get – I just kind of want to go around the fringe, just get you guys' opinions on Christian Watson so far this season. Because, he's come back, and for the most part, he's Christian Watson. They're using him down the field. He's their deep threat guy. He's always a touchdown. He's always a big play away from having a huge fantasy week. this, that, and everything else. Like, I get the appeal of a Christian Watson, but heading into a defense like Denver, which seems to kind of want to disrupt those deep sort of passing attacks, and especially having a cornerback room that has a guy like Pat Surtain. Guys, what are your overall feelings about Christian Watson? I'm going to make my case, but I just kind of want to see where you guys are on him so far this season, and kind of just real generally where you guys are this week on it.
Drew?
I've been really impressed overall, honestly. Whenever he first came back, I fully expected him to just be like that boomer bust guy that's going to see a few targets a week. Maybe he makes something out of it. Maybe he doesn't. And for the first few weeks, that was kind of the case. But prior to last week, when he only saw 4 targets, you had seen a pretty consistent ramp up where, I mean, it went from in week 11, he had 5 targets, 7 in week 12, 10 in week 13. And he's been a top 12 receiver 3 out of his last 4 games. So, I mean, that's not a boom or bust guy at that point. That is just a boom guy for the most part. I mean, he's pretty much stepped in as the Packers wide receiver 1, that a role that for a good first portion of the year Dobbs had taken care of. But it seems like Watson has stepped into that role, and he's, I think he can do more with those targets. So I think it's smart to get him the ball more often. Now, we'll see what the returner Jaden Reed does to that. Jaden Reed's always been a part-time snap type of player anyway, but whenever he's out there on the field, he tends to get a pretty good amount of touches. So we'll see if that affects it. But so, I mean, overall, I've been relatively impressed, but I'm sure you'll expand into this more. This week, I think there's very fair reasons to be concerned just with how good Denver's secondary is. They've locked up receivers much better than Christian Watson, as good as he's been. So.
Yeah, and that's the sauce. I mean, for me, go ahead, Nate. I'm sorry.
No, as you say, I agree with Drew a little bit, not a little bit, but about Christian Watson as far as since he's come back. The one thing that changed with the Packers that has given me encouragement, at least up until this week, because I'm right there with you, Rhett, is that prior to him coming back, the Packers had spread the ball around. About 55% of their targets went to the wide receiver position. 18 was going to the running back. 23 was going to the tight end. In the last month and a half, last 5 weeks, 70% of the passes have gone to the wide receiver position. So they're definitely, and guess what? Tucker Kraft being out doesn't really change.
Yeah.
It does make sense. But yeah, the target breakdown now, they're second in the NFL over the last 5 weeks in terms of target percentage to the wide receiver. And that's been, it's really been fueling that solid or at least beneficial floor towards Christian Watson. They have not faced the Denver Broncos in those 5 weeks, though.
Right.
And what I'm looking at with Christian Watson is, he's got the profile. I mean, he's sitting here. He's averaging 100 air yards per game. He's 17th amongst receivers in air yard share, 36%. He has an ADOT of 18.4 yards, which is third at the position. I mean, the profile on Christian Watson, we know what the deal is by now, is use him as he's their X, he's their clear out, he's their deep ball guy. Like, there's no secrets, there's no surprises. But with the way Denver tends to play defense and with these types of cornerbacks that they have, I mean, my argument is very simply going to be this. Number one, deep balls tend to just be a little bit more risky, a little bit more boomer bust, harder to complete. Denver really good at disrupting those deep plays themselves with that pass rush, all these different things as well. With the way that this game is probably going to play out this week, game script is probably going to dictate Green Bay very much shifting to more of a short, intermediate passing game, utilizing guys like Romeo Dobbs, Dontavian Wicks. And guys, Josh Jacobs is still around. So if you're looking at the way this game is probably going to play out this week, if Christian Watson proves me wrong and catches a 60-yard touchdown, very distinct possibility, then I'm wrong. And I'm okay with that. But in terms of pure process, we have to pass on this guy this week because it's a trap game for Christian Watson. We've seen the wide receiver 1 finishes 3 out of the past 4 weeks. The ceiling is there, but with the matchup and the way Denver tends to play defense, The possibility of this just being a dud game for Christian Watson, which with guys like this, these deep threat guys, I mean, it wouldn't be the first time in history that something like this has happened. I mean, I think that possibility is much higher than people realize.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fair argument and definitely somebody to be concerned about. I went down a pretty similar route for my pass play this week, looking at a receiver with a tough matchup, and I think there's a couple pretty obvious reasons to be worried about Michael Pittman Jr. this week. The first being the fact that Daniel Jones has lost for the season with an injury, and now we've either got Riley Leonard, who I don't trust as a passer, or Phillip Rivers stepping in to play football for the first time since 2020. And Rivers very well might be one of still like the 10, 15 best quarterbacks in the league from the neck up. But I have no idea what the physical is going to look like from the neck down. Like I don't know if he's going to be able to make those difficult boundary throws still. I don't know what that's going to look like. I do think it's fair, Rhett, like you mentioned earlier, I think it's fair to expect a bunch of Jonathan Taylor in this game. And I think that there's going to be plenty of work for Tyler Warren over the middle of the field as well. That's the Seahawks cover pretty much everything extremely well, except for the tight end. They've been the fifth best matchup for tight ends over the last 5 weeks. But one position that they haven't struggled to cover is the wide receiver position, which brings up the other obvious reason to worry about Pittman outside of the quarterback situation is the fact that over the last 5 weeks, the Seahawks have been the fifth most difficult matchup for fantasy receivers based on schedule adjusted fantasy points given up to the position. It's nice that Pittman moves around all over the formation, but it doesn't really matter where he lines up in this one. All three of the Seahawks top corners, they're giving up less than 0.25 fantasy points per route run, which is a very strong number. If you don't have like the context behind that, it's a very strong number for the fact that both outside corners and your slot corner are all below that number. Kind of speaks volumes to how good the secondary's been recently. And so it's obviously not ideal that given the fact that if you're in the fantasy playoffs right now and you've got Pittman on your team, he was probably a pretty big reason why you're there. And now I'm sitting here to tell you to pass on him the first week of the fantasy playoffs. But I would just personally prefer to avoid the Colts offense outside of JT and Tyler Warren this week if you've got other options and can afford to do so. So with the quarterback change, the brutal matchup, Michael Pittman Jr., he's a pass for me this week.
I was burnt last week, and it seems like every other time I had to choose between the Alec Pierce, Michael Pittman conversation, the answer was probably no. Well, the answer has always been no for me as far as getting it correct. So you guys do that sometimes? You just avoid. You're like, I constantly, and I've had plenty of questions like that. I choose one, tell me which way to go. So I just end up hedging the way that I want to do it. Just take out the fantasy gods because they think that I'm thinking one way.
Yep.
You always got to get that reverse psychology going. You never know when it's going to work.
I can't spell psychology.
So, are there any new questions before we move into this new segment, Pop or Flop?
No, sir. We can get this last segment out underway.
Well, let's keep it rolling because, like we said, we're going to go over guys that we think can either pop or flop this week. And basically, the whole premise is just upside guys. We're trying to look at guys outside of the top 100 in the flex as you're making a playoff push. If you're looking for somebody to kind of put you over the top, we're each going to highlight a player that we think has the potential to maybe step into a flex position for you this week and return more value than where they currently are. So, Nate, I'm going to lead it off with you, man. You're the only guy who went with the running back position this week. And guy coming off a pretty good week himself, if I may say so myself. So talking to Jalen Wright, who's the flex 144 in the running back 50 for the week.
Yeah, and rightfully so why he's that far down, because when Devon Achane left the game last week, it was an injury that Mike McDaniel said he could have returned from. And will he play this week? His response, while somewhat candid of if he's able to, he'll be out there, sure seems like I don't know what's going to happen. But I think we've all been wrong in some capacity over the course of the season, assuming that when Devon Achane was out, it was going to be Ollie Gordon's backfield. And I think we learned rather quickly last week that it's Jalen Wright that we should be rostering when that scenario happens. And I hope it doesn't, because I don't want anybody going to the fantasy playoffs without Devon Achane. He's been fantastic. Everything that I've loved about him all season, he continues to do. But there's a case to be made that even with Devon Achane being in the game, if he does play, it's probably a pain tolerance scenario. And maybe there's a likelihood that they don't run him into the ground. And Jalen Wright on limited snaps can see explosive run rate versus the Steelers is not exactly a recipe for immediate success. But this is also the long play. Let's hope that you can get through this week, because who do they have the following week after that? Oh, they get the Cincinnati Bengals. So you have at Pittsburgh, you get the Bengals, then you get the Buccaneers, who've been surprisingly bad against the run as a whole. They conclude in week 18, which you're not playing the fantasy championships in week 18. If you are, leave the league, start over, because that's stupid if you ask me. But that week is against the Patriots, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, Jalen Wright just seems like it's too late for waivers now. He's almost guaranteed to be picked up. I don't know what his rostership ownership is right now, but in the situation that he's available, at least pick him up and have him ready to go. Because if Devon Achane is even remote, like practice report hasn't come out, but if he misses, I can easily see Wright being I don't think he would be too far away from the Woody Marks, Breece Hall bottom end of RB2 conversation.
Yeah, wow. I think that's fair. I can definitely say the one league I have Achane in, I made sure I spent all but like $2 of my fab that I had left on Wright, because it's the troubling thing about that whole situation is it's the Monday night game, and so by the time we get there, if we get some breaking news that Achane isn't going to play, if you don't already have Wright, then you might be picking up Ollie Gordon off waivers to play the RB2 in the game instead of playing Jalen Wright. So if you have Achane, I hope you got him, because we might not find out until Monday. But yeah, I agree. I think it's a smart call.
Yeah, and Jalen Wright come off the big game. Looks like he might be the RB2 if Achane doesn't play. I'm just going a little more conservative. And when I say conservative, I went the guy that was highest up the list. Literally only the flex 105 and wide receiver 49. But we just talked about the Christian Watson situation and how that might be a trap for him this week. We mentioned the short and intermediate passing game for Green Bay. So what that tells me is that we could very well be in a Romeo Doubs game this week for the Packers. I mean, this is a guy that over the past few years, like it or not, I know that they've kind of spread the ball around pretty consistently. But it always seems that Romeo Doubs kind of just finds a way. He's kind of just been the reliable guy in that receiver room the past few years. Jaden Reed has had some ups and downs. Dontavian Wicks has a here and there. Christian Watson when he's not. But Romeo Doubs is a guy that leads his team in end zone targets. He's their third down guy that they go to when they need to move the sticks. And if Denver decides to double team Christian Watson, who, like we said, throughout the past 4 weeks has been a wide receiver one, Romeo Doubs gets an opportunity at isolation coverage and some high leverage red zone shots. And he's been with Jordan Love for a few years now. So they got the good timing on those slants, timing fades, all these different sort of things. Like, it is very much a situation where you have a guy who is going to have Jordan Love's attention pretty much no matter what. If you're looking for a boom guy at wide receiver 49, if Romeo Doubs delivers a touchdown, or if he gets 7 to 8 targets and converts that into 5 catches and 58 yards, or 6 catches and 71 yards, or whatever, a very Romeo Doubs-like stat line, I mean, you've already won. You've already got a guy who has outperformed his situation this week. And if he gets a touchdown and you end up with 18 points out of Romeo Doubs in a playoff season out of the flex, you're good to go, and you have a good chance of advancing next week.
Yeah, and there will be plenty of people that, given the weekly plug and play from injuries that have happened along the just over the course of the past couple of weeks that they made it this far. And I think Drew probably would agree with a lot of the how to make that decision at the wide receiver is it's that boom if you're trailing or if you are expected to lose. I hate to say that. Expected to win, expected to lose, because we're using projections based off of the site, which we all hate, and then we use that as a fuel for our fire. I'm like, Yahoo does say I'm supposed to lose by 20. I'm going to go shoot for the upside, but yet all of our rankings say otherwise. We fall prey to that too.
We do. So Drew, take us home, man, because
Yep.
if there was a gutsy call amongst these three popper flops, I mean, this is kind of the scariest one in my opinion, because you and I talked about this at the trade deadline. We both had high hopes for Rashid Shaheed in the Seattle Seahawks offense, and so far, not great, Bob. So you have him as a guy who can be an upside play for you this week, or he could possibly flop it out. But tell me, pause. But tell me why Rashid Shaheed is an upside guy for you this week. What gives you faith that this could be one of those potential matchup winning moves this week?
Yeah, I was starting to kind of question why Seattle even traded for Rashid Shaheed in the first place, but he finally started to get a little bit more involved last week. He was still third among Seahawks receivers in routes run behind JSN and Cooper Kupp. He had 5 less routes run than Kupp, but he finished second on the team with 5 targets, turned that into 4 receptions for 67 yards, which was easily his best game since being traded to Seattle. So coming off what has been so far his best game with the Seahawks, he gets to play against a banged-up Colts secondary that's been the 4th best matchup for fantasy receivers over the last 5 weeks. And he's likely going to spend around half his snaps matched up against Jalen Jones, that's giving up an absurd 0.43 fantasy points per route run, which is the 4th highest number among all of the full-time, top 3 on their team starting DBs. He's given up the 4th highest fantasy points per route run. Since it's the first time we're trying out this new segment, I felt like it was only fitting to pick someone that I feel like couldn't really embody the title of the segment any better, because a lot of times he has been a true pop or flop type of player. But I think given the matchup and his increased involvement last week, if that rolls into this week, I think he has a better chance of popping instead of flopping. So I'll even say I'd start him over Romeo Doubs. How about that?
Ooh, saucy.
I did like it. I noticed that you said that the last really month or so, the Colts against the receiver position, they're 2nd in average depth of target. They're 5th in air yards allowed. They're top 10, really 12 in targets. So everything has been trending towards them actually being exploitable at the wide receiver position. And I think that adds in. I think it's a good call. I'll be intrigued to see how many leagues I'm going to start scouring through right now to see if Shaheed's out there and I get duped into this I trust you guys more than others scenario like I always do.
Yeah, just don't ask me about AD Mitchell.
I won't.
Be okay.
I don't who?
Exactly. Yeah, very good. Very good.
We don't talk about AD Mitchell around here. I think tonight we can plant our flag as being an anti AD Mitchell podcast. Yes. No more on AD Mitchell. So, which brings us to a perfect place before we get out of here. If you want to or don't want to play AD Mitchell this week, what better place than Fast Draft, where the season, we're coming to the end of things, but you know what? Fast Draft still has those games going on. You can play that Flex 6 Frenzy, 10 teams, 6 rounds, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. 6 rounds, 20-second clock. You pick your best 6 in PPR, score them for the Sunday slate. Make yourself a little bit of money. Or the Quick 6 Super Slam, where you're just picking 6 guys for Sunday games. No salary cap, no problem. You pick your best 6 and you make it happen over at Fast Draft, ladies and gentlemen. So before we get out of here, fellas, do we have any other questions we need to look at before we depart?
No,
sir. The queue is empty.
Slow night. Slow night at the office. So Nate, Sunday pregame show. Walk us through it, bud.
Yeah, 8 a.m. Central till 11 a.m. Central. Myself, Jorge Edwards, Andy Behrens, Dave Abraham, whoever else is going to join us. It's a good time. We've any start-sit questions you may have, any general strategy questions going into the playoffs. We get a mix of everything. It's kind of nice. We're mostly just talking ball for about 3 hours. Yeah, 3 hours. It's a long time, but it doesn't feel that bad like this. It's an hour going strong. We could probably go 2 more hours and we wouldn't notice it. We're not going to, but yeah. So obviously everybody's always welcome. Stop in. Good luck with everybody in your leagues. I hope you don't need any questions because you have all the answers.
That's right.
Yeah, you have all the answers. You don't even need us. But if you did need us, like we said earlier tonight, Plays and Fades just dropped on fantasyandframes.com tonight. 7 of these players that we talked about during tonight's show, you can get a little bit more in-depth over at fantasyandframes.com. Link right there in the comments if you have any interest in that. But Drew, what you got going on, brother?
Man, I've got the week 15 version of the Fantasy Alarm wide receiver cornerback matchup report will be dropping tomorrow afternoon. And then just trying to stay on top of these rankings as we head into the weekend. It's a big weekend for start and sit decisions and make and break decisions for fantasy lineups. We're all playing a 1 week game now at this point. So if you guys need those, we've got staff rankings for week 15 up on the website. So make sure to head over to Fantasy and Frames and check those out for your if you have a start sit question you randomly think of that you weren't able to answer during the show, you can just go check out our rankings and find our answers there.
Yep. Or drop us questions on Twitter. We'll be happy to get to them.
Or that, absolutely.
So yeah. Besides that, guys, we will be back next week. Week 16, or as most people like to look at it, semifinal week. Y'all know the deal. Y'all know where to find us at Nate Markham, at Drew3MR, at Armanuel Sports, at fantasyandframes.com if you need anything. We are for the frames. Toodles, baby.